everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our meeting. First, I'd like to start by just saying, do you have any questions of anything that we've covered so far through the modules? Obviously, you have another module that is due this evening at 11:59 p.m., so I just wondered if there were any questions about those assignments. Everyone's doing a great job keeping up to speed with everything, and I'm enjoying reading your journals. Everyone has been, for the most part, very thorough in answering those things, and so hopefully it's been beneficial to you to reflect on some of those time management things and career ideas, so on and so forth. So if you have a question, please type it in the chat box. If you don't, you can just type an N for no so that I know that no one has any questions. You'll want to go ahead and mute your mics today so that we can't hear you necessarily while our meeting takes place and our guest speaker is here, but then you can also interact through the chat if you have any questions, so she'll facilitate that. All right, so hi Chelsea, I see no for you. Anyone else? Adam, no? Good. All right, so let me take a moment, and I don't think anyone has any questions, so we'll get started here with our guest speaker. Today we have Barb Houseworth, and she is here from the Experiential Learning Coordinator. That is her position here at WCC. So she's going to be talking about kind of how to go through the experiences that you have about learning what interests you and what might be a good fit for you in the future with career and so on and so forth. So she'll go through that. I'm going to turn off the webcam. So you won't be able to see us, but you'll be able to see the PowerPoint. And if you have any questions, of course, you can type it in the chat box. So I will turn it over to her. And if you have any questions, let me know. And then I will kind of wrap things up at the end. So thanks.
Good afternoon, I guess it is now. Thanks everybody for joining me, and I hope I have a topic that is something that you can all benefit from, and that is how do you gain experience into the industry that you potentially are going into. So for those who are with me, if you could just kind of tell me what you're thinking about ultimately doing, that would help me as I'm going through the presentation to see how I can best assist you. And if you don't have any idea yet, or you're still trying to explore exactly what you might be going into, just let me know, and that's fine too, because a lot of students are in that exploratory stage and not quite sure exactly what they're looking for, and that's just fine too. So I'm just gonna so today we're going to talk about experiential learning. It's a long and fancy word, but basically it means, as I go to my next slide, let's see, hold on one second, we'll get this right. There we go. Anything that you can get hands-on experience from. So for the majority of people, you're going to need some hands-on experience, and there's lots of different reasons why you might want to get some experience, but it means actively engaging and involving yourself in some type of experience. So that could be also referred to a lot of different terms of experiential learning. Can be internships and co-ops are probably the two most popular phrases that you might have heard. And then we'll talk about the differences between that, between those two things. And then apprenticeships, job shadowing, student teaching, if we have anybody who's going into teaching, community service, volunteer work, oftentimes can be experiential learning too. Clinicals for some of those in healthcare. Externships oftentimes is used interchangeably and sometimes wrong with internships, but you'll hear this word: field research, practicums, and independent studies. So I've got a couple people who've responded. Someone's going into neuroscience, woodworking, accounting, great, a lot of diverse group here, and then also pharmacy, great. So we can talk a little bit about how experiential learning might benefit each of you as you're going into your fields. Let's talk about some of the reasons why experiential learning is not only so important for you to explore your career field, because many of you, even if you do know already where you're going into or think you have a strong idea of what you're going to do in the future, this may be your first opportunity to actually see the profession you're going into by doing an internship or a co-op. So for those or apprenticeships, especially for the gentleman who's doing woodworking, you may go into an apprenticeship, because if you aren't, you may have some ideas about the career that you're going into, but until you actually do the hands-on work, you may not have an opportunity to really know what that work is really going to be like until you do it and experience it. So one of the other things that I always tell students, because students sometimes think that experiential learning internships are something that you do towards the very tail end of your experience here at Washtenaw Community College. And I'd like to debunk that right now. It's really important, and I really stress this, that you try to get an experiential learning opportunity as soon as you can. So even first semester students here, I would highly encourage you explore experiential learning with our office. And to understand why it's so important is, one of the things I will tell you is that, including myself, was one of the people who many years ago that this was kind of the norm, that your last year of college, I was in a 4-year university, is when you actually were encouraged mainly to explore experiential learning. And I thought I knew exactly what I was going into. I felt very confident and strong about my experience or the career that I thought I had chosen. And then I had my internship. And guess what? It wasn't a bad experience, but it wasn't a great experience for me. And I thought, gosh, you know, this is something that I'm intending to potentially do for the rest of my life. And I wasn't really in love with going to work every day. And so I started to really rethink and thought, gosh, did I choose the wrong major? Am I choosing the wrong profession? Do I have to go back and take a whole bunch of different credits and explore different careers? And it was a really tumultuous time for me. When I'm going into my senior year thinking, gosh, I'm almost done. And now I may have to change majors and start all over again, or at least start at a point, you know, back further than what I thought I was going to be. So that's one of the reasons I want you to explore experiential learning early. Here's the other reason. This slide talks about why it's so crucial to learning. So one of the other things that I don't think students think about a lot about experiential learning is what it does in terms of your retention level. So oftentimes students will come back from an experiential learning opportunity and they'll say to me, gosh, I am so much better student. My grades have really improved. The things that were being talked about in my classes, I really started to understand and grasp so much more. And here this slide talks about why that is. So if you're just listening to me like you are today, or you might be for most of the faculty members that you're sitting in class, and nothing against our faculty members and myself, you're only going to retain a very small amount of our information. On average, they say long-term retention from just listening is about 5%. Not great. So in fact, I kind of wonder sometimes how we pass tests. But here's the flip side to this. If you're actually doing hands-on work, i.e. experiential learning, learning about it, seeing it firsthand, that retention level increases to 75%. So this is a study. You can read a little bit more about it if you want to go into it. But that is a huge, huge jump in retention. So of course, students are usually better in their experiences because they remember more and they start to understand the things that were being talked about in kind of a broad fashion, maybe in classes, all of a sudden start to have practical applications and really start to hold into the learning process. So again, do you want to be a better student at the end of your education process, or would you rather be a better student at the beginning of your education process? So again, I would really encourage students to do this as soon as they can. Here are some of the reasons that I find that students say that they wait to come see us or wait to come talk about experiential learning. They think that I can't do an internship or a co-op because almost all of those opportunities are unpaid and I need to work. And I understand that. Most students here, most students in general probably need to earn some money. That has really changed. And it used to be more the norm if you were talking 20, 30 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. But the Department of Labor changed their laws. And now most internships, unless you're working for a nonprofit company, so some of those you who are maybe going to work for a hospital, I know there was a couple of neuroscience or pharmacy, it's probably going to be unpaid because it's probably going to be a clinical, but you're still gaining experience. So, and most of the internships, just to give you an idea, in this area run between $10 and $12 an hour. My IT students garner a little bit more. They typically are running a little bit higher than that, but in general, that's the average. So nice hourly wage, plus you're getting some experience. Again, we already talked about you have to be a junior or senior. I think what students sometimes think is, gosh, I just started. I've taken, a couple of my gen ed classes, and I don't have any experience to offer employers for an internship. And I will tell you, some employers require a little bit more experience, but a lot of employers don't. And in fact, a lot of employers like to retain students who are early in their process because they can help mold them, they can help guide them, and they can train them the way that they want to train from early on. And just so you know, the reason why is what's in it for the employer? Why does an employer want to do an internship or co-op? Well, I can tell you I was a recruiter for 7 years, and I actually ran an internship program where we hired about 100 interns a year through our program, so quite a bit. And the main reason we did it was so that we could test drive students or potential hires. So a lot of people interview very well, and then you get them into the mix, and then, gosh, all of a sudden they're not panning out. But in an internship, I have about usually 3 months, because that's the average time of an internship, to really test drive somebody. So if I'm going to make someone a full-time offer, I'm pretty confident of their skill levels and their ability to fit in with our culture before I make them a full-time offer as an intern. And that's why employers oftentimes offer internships. And so for a lot of people, that also is the upside of an internship, is that it could potentially turn into a full-time opportunity. So just to think about. Some people think you have to have some kind of relevant work experience to get the internship or co-op. Again, the whole purpose of the internship is to give you that experience. So that's really not necessarily true for most internships. A couple employers might like to see that, but not required for most. And then the final thing is about when do the internships take place or co-ops take place. So it used to be, and actually I will say that there still is a majority of internships that take place in the summer months, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any during the academic year. So a lot of companies, because university students are typically off during the summer, they can offer a full-time internship, 40-hour work week during the summer, and that's why you'll often see more internship opportunities in the summer, because they're catering not only to college students, like community college students, but they're also catering to university students who aren't away at classes and have some time to invest in an internship. However, during the academic year, typically those internships and co-ops are part-time. So they don't typically interfere really greatly with, hopefully, your school schedule. So normally what we'll see is a full-time opportunity in the summer, and then during the academic year, I usually see anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week for an internship that goes on during the academic year. So if you are interested, you can't do it this summer or can't do it next summer, but are interested and you want to be able to work it into your schedule, think about that. You might be able to do a part-time internship during the academic year. And by the way, just so you know, from a timing perspective, internships have become very competitive, and so employers are starting to advertise for their summer internships early and earlier. I have one employer who opens it up in October, and they close it by the middle of November for that next summer. However, I will say that's kind of the exception. Most of the internships, though, for the summer will open up in November, December. You'll see them advertising. They'll actually close them and stop taking applications and interviewing in usually February or March. So don't wait until March, April, or May to start looking for an internship, because you're going to have a limited number. There still will be some. I'm still finding students internships now, or helping them find internships now, even in May, at the end of May almost, but it's a lot less available. So just from a timing perspective, be aware of that as well. Next one, let's see. So why do you think, you know what, I don't want to give that away yet. Let's stay here. What are some of the reasons, besides the learning, increase in retention of material, do you think you might want to do an internship? If you can just type some of the things that you think would be an advantage to doing an internship in a co-op, and I'll take this time while you're typing to talk about the differences between internships and co-ops. So those words are actually often used simultaneously, but here at WCC, they mean two different things. So an internship is typically 3 months in length, in general, and they can be longer or they can be shorter, but typically that's an average amount. I've had one student who did an internship for almost 2 years. So again, it can be a rolling internship where it continues on past the 3 months. It can be paid or unpaid. Most of the time, as I just spoke about, it is paid. And it is an opportunity, it could be part-time, full-time, for you to see hands-on how the organization runs or the role that you're going into. And again, just take a few minutes to talk about why you think experiential learning might be beneficial for you. And then a co-op is actually in cooperation with the college. So it starts when the semester starts and it ends when the semester ends. And it can run any semester during the year typically. And almost all of our majors here have that option, and most of them don't require that co-op as a part of your program, but have an option for credit. That's the big difference between internships and a co-op. Your co-op, not only can you gain experience, it could be paid or unpaid. It's typically is going to follow a semester, so it's going to be 12 weeks in duration or 15 weeks depending on the semester, but typically, again, about 3 or 4 months at the most. The big difference is that in addition to all those other things that you get with an internship, you could potentially earn class credit. And how it works is for every 120 hours that you put into the internship, you get 1 credit, up to 3 credits. So at 360 or above hours, you could get the max of 3 credits. That's a really nice thing to offer if you are needing a few more credits, you just need to round out that so you can gain all that experience plus get some college credit. So that has to be approved with your faculty member for your department. It has to go through also a career services check, and then the employer has some requirements. They have to evaluate you, set some objectives, and then they're going to do a midterm evaluation as well as a final. So there is some work on your part, on the employer's part, and certainly on ours, but again, it's nice. So Grace said one of the reasons that she thinks experiential learning might be really important is so you can see different work environments. Grace, you bring up a great point. So a lot of times you may be very set in what you want to do as a career and feel very confident about that. But how many of us, and I'll be the first to say it certainly happened to me, have worked in environments or worked with people that really changed how I felt about my career. And so sometimes it's not necessarily the work, it's sometimes the work environment. And so the nice thing about an internship or co-op is, again, it's 3 months. If after 3 months, typically, you don't enjoy it, you don't feel like that's a good fit for you, and it may not be that it's a bad company or they're bad people, it just isn't the right fit, right? Sometimes that happens. You get to walk away and it is not deemed as a negative on your resume. You got work experience. It was only deemed for a short period of time anyways. And you get to walk away and say, thank you very much. It was a great experience, but you don't have to continue working there. But after 3 months, if you really like it, then you may work into a full-time opportunity. Now, let's do this on the flip side. If I had taken a full-time job and after 3 months I decided, gosh, this wasn't the right fit for me. This was not a good culture. This is not an environment I enjoy or not a job I enjoy, and you left. And I can tell you as a recruiter, anytime you leave a job in less than a year's time, that's a red flag to a recruiter, except when it's an internship, because that's the nature of an internship or a co-op. So if you want to explore different work environments, like Grace was indicating, that's a great way to do it. I know, Chelsea, you made a comment here too. Having a better understanding of the type of work you might do, potentially networking with people. Great point, Chelsea. So I'm going to tell you this. People think because of the internet that the #1 way people find jobs is on the internet, right? Maybe a few of you might have think that, because there are a lot of great resources on the internet, and I'm not taking away from the internet. We'll talk about those resources. However, the truth of the matter is, this day, as was 10 years ago, as was 30 years ago, the #1 way that people still find jobs is through networking. It's who you know or who you know that might know someone. And so those are really great, important connections to be made. which you can make on an internship or a co-op. And then exploring the work that you might do. As I mentioned earlier, I said I had an opportunity to explore in my between my junior and senior year, my internship, and then I said it wasn't such a great experience. Actually, what I found out is I did an internship that fall again. Different company, different organization actually, but surprisingly to me, it was almost the exact same work I had done in the summer. In fact, that's why I said it was surprising that I even took it, because I didn't have a great experience in the summer. But what happened was I loved it. And what I realized, again, back to Grace's point, is sometimes it's not about the work. For that individual, I worked, my second internship was with a school system, public school system. Lo and behold, look where I'm working today. So sometimes you can find out that different environments are for you. Sadie has a comment too. You get to see if that's what you want to do. Also, it could help you swiftly shift you, I think it means, to a slightly different field inside your degree. Right. So one thing that I always like to talk to students is about, we have a pretty limited scope of knowledge of careers, right? Even myself, I'll be honest with you, I hear about careers, new career opportunities that didn't even exist, 5 years ago. So when I see students, a lot of times they'll come in and talk to me about, let's say, healthcare. And we all know about doctors and nurses and some of the more traditional roles within healthcare, but there are thousands of careers, even just within one industry like healthcare. Surgery techs, which was something that's relatively new. Sterile processing, which was almost unheard of 5-10 years ago. So there's lots of different opportunities. So sometimes you might work for an organization and maybe you're doing pharmacy work, or maybe you're doing neuroscience, as some of you indicated, and then all of a sudden you get exposed, or you see someone else in that industry or in that work environment, and you say, wow, that's really neat. That's maybe something else I'd like to explore. Or you're exposed to it, something that you've never even thought about. And I can tell you that has happened to me many, many times in my career. I started out as a communications major, very traditional public relations background. I started to work for a company that ended up going public, and lo and behold, they needed someone to handle the investor relations part of it, which was not something I was familiar with or understood, or I even felt comfortable when they offered me the position. And I loved that part of it. I learned a whole bunch of information, especially on the finance side, that I had never known before. And so it's really just good to keep your options open. And then finally, we said gaining experience to later help you in what you plan on doing. Right, so do you think that you're more valuable as someone who's had an internship to an employer versus someone who has not? Well, I can tell you, absolutely. The more experience you have in your field, it's going to help you not only plan what you're going to do, but also has a value to recruiters if they're going to start hiring you into a full-time capacity. And we're going to talk about that value and what that means too. Okay, oops, I almost skipped over. So we already talked about test driving. How do you know what careers you want to go? These are some of the other reasons you might want to explore experiential learning. Careers, believe it or not, are not all what we see on TV or read in a book. Those are usually the glamorous parts. And every career has the highs and their lows, and so it allows you to explore those. And sometimes I've had many students who, especially when they're dealing with patients, realize that they can't handle that level of emotion. And in fact, I have a very close family member who wanted to be a vet, and then they got their first vet experience, actually did an experiential learning, and realized they can't put down animals. They are too closely tied to the emotions of caring for animals, and that wasn't a good career choice for them. So thankfully they explored that before they got into vet school and invested all that money and time and effort. We have a limited exposure. We already talked about that. You learn what sometimes, this is a great lesson. Sometimes you don't always learn about what you like in a job. Sometimes you learn more about what you don't like. And that's valuable too, because it helps to start eliminating. If you are a little undecided or not really sure where you're going to go, sometimes that helps to narrow it down by saying, gosh, you know what? I don't like working with patients directly, or I don't like sitting at a computer all day, or I do like this. And so those don'ts are actually really valuable lessons too. Let's talk about why most of my students get really excited about internships. And that is hopefully that it already sets them up for a full-time career. So about 60% of internships that students go on actually turn into job offers. And some people are a little disappointed by that, but let's put that number into perspective. So I want you guys to take a guess. If I am applying for a job on Indeed or Monster or Career Builder or some of those big job boards that you may have heard of, what do you think is the average percent of people who get a job from one of those big job boards? Just give me a number, throw out a number. Chelsea says 10 to 20, okay? Any other guesses out there? 10 to 20 for Indeed, applying through it, okay, 40. Any other thoughts? I know we have a couple more people on the line. 15 says Sadie. I think we've got one more person. See if they can give a guess. So we've got anywhere from 10 to 40% is your options. So I don't have an exact figure for you, but I will tell you that when I was a recruiter, it would not be uncommon for when I post for one position for me to get over 100 resumes on Indeed. Okay, what is that percentage? 1. Right, Chelsea, 1%. Now again, is that every job? No, but the good thing about Indeed and Monster and Career Builder, and I'm not knocking that as an opportunity for you to look for, in fact, I encourage students to look there, is they have tons of job opportunities, more than probably any other one place. The downside is most of you and most of us in the world know about those opportunities on Indeed because it's a really recognizable name. And that means most people, when they start their job search, oftentimes start there. So the competition is so much more. And again, I don't know if it's always going to be 1%. It could be 30% or 20%. But let's go back to what I told you, the opportunities for internships to turn into full-time careers are 60%. I think I like my odds at 60 versus 1 or 10 or 20 any day of the week. So just be aware of that. And there are ways that in our career services office that we can assist you with being more successful at job search. You're certainly more than welcome. And I know students like to use the internet, and there's a great resource. But there are some resources that we can guide you to. Some of them are internet-based and some are not. Again, we talked about how valuable networking is and still is the number1 way people find jobs. Oftentimes, you're not going to be able to really utilize, blackout. You can still hear me, but but one of the things that I will say is there are some really effective ways to look for a job, and there's a lot of ways where you're going to be spinning your wheels and sending out lots of resumes and not getting lots of responses, and we don't want you to do that. So that's one of the things that we can certainly help you with in career services. And then somebody mentioned too about networking. Again, that's a really big, valuable reason why. Gaining skills development. So as much as we love to provide you with labs and simulation work in our classrooms, it just cannot replicate 100% of you getting out and working out there and working in a team and working in a corporate or a professional setting. So I will tell you, you will get different kinds of skills than we can oftentimes simulate here at WCC. Marketability, and I think this is really huge for you guys to know. I think students are often surprised by how common it is for most students across all universities and colleges to be exploring internships. Now, I'm going to tell you this. The statistic says, and this statistic is about a little over a year, so I know it's gone up a little bit, but over 50% of students do internships. And students are actually even surprised by that, because I usually ask that question and people say, 10% or very small, a lower number than that. I can tell you as a recruiter, when I would go onto campus, it was rare, and I recruited here in Michigan. I covered 23 campuses throughout the state of Michigan. It was rare, and I recruited about 8 years ago. that I found students who didn't have internships. That's how important it is. If you want to keep yourself on a level, even level playing field with the rest of the grads who are all graduating at the same time, or, you know, honestly, Ann Arbor is a very competitive market, right? We've got U of M, we've got Eastern, we've got Concordia, we've got a lot of schools in this immediate area. So when you're getting out and you're competing with those same grads from all those different universities, and you may or may not have had a internship, that can really change the playing field. So I really want you to think about that. If you think, gosh, I don't know if I really need that, I'm going to tell you as a recruiter, I would hope that you would think that you can't afford not to have one. And 95%, huge number of employers are saying candidate experience, AKA experiential learning, is the most major factor in hiring. 95%. That's a lot. So just think about that. Think about it from the recruiter standpoint. Again, if you need income, most of those opportunities should be paid unless you're working for nonprofits. Let's talk about potential starting salaries. I think this resonates with students as well. First of all, I usually ask this question: do you think having an internship is going to assist you, possibly, we can't promise that, in a higher salary? Yes or no? Just quickly type in. Yeah, Sadie. Anybody else? Do you think that that's gonna? Yes. Okay. So good. I think we're all in agreement that that's gonna assist you. Let's talk about what the percentages are, because there's been lots of studies with grads, those who had internships opportunities and those who didn't, in similar majors going after similar types of careers, and what the difference is. So I am someone who has had, I had a 4-year degree, I graduated in a major, and I am being retained by a company, and I'm being offered $40,000 as a full-time starting salary upon graduation, okay? Now I'm gonna ask you for a number. An average internship, again, is 3 months, right? They have done those studies against students who've had an internship, those who are co-op, and not. If I'm offered $40,000, a similar student who has the same degree going for the same position is offered that position, but they've had an internship experience. What do you think the employer sees? We talked about that higher potential salary as a value to having that internship. So the one person who did not have an internship is offered 40. You're the person who has had an internship or co-op experiential learning opportunity. What do you think they're going to be offered in a yearly salary across the board? Chelsea, guessed 45,000 to 50. Any other thoughts out there? 42 to 45 says Kate Sadie. These are good guesses, by the way. Let's see if I can get one more. Okay, good, 45. Okay, good. Well, you guys aren't far off. On average, it's a little higher though than you guessed. On average, across all majors, it's about an $8,000 differential. $8,000. So 48,000 versus 40,000 is what typically employers are offering for students who've had some type of experiential learning. That's how valuable it is. Now let's talk about that. $8,000, we talked about the average time of an internship or co-op is 3 months, right? So a 3-month investment, and I get $8,000 a year. Wow, I think that's a pretty good return on investment, because I'm going to tell you, being in the working world for a long time, you're a pretty good rock star if you get over an $8,000 raise in 1 year. That is a heck of a raise. It does not happen very often unless you've had a major promotion. So if you think that you can't afford to figure out how to do an experiential learning, I'm going to ask you, can you afford not to? Because here's what I also want you to think about. Let's take those two people who hypothetically and again, that's an average, so it can go either way, but who are both starting out at $40,000 and $48,000. Year 2, the employer is offering everybody the same type of raise as long as they were performing at an adequate level. And so they're going to give you a certain percentage. And I'm just, for math reasons, I'm going to give you 5%. They're going to give you a 5% raise. Except, however, the person without the internship is getting a 5% raise on $40,000. And the person who got an internship is getting a 5% raise on $48,000. So do you see what happens to every earning potential year after that? That gap keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because the first person, $40,000, they got a $2,000 raise, right? So now they're making $42,000. The person who makes $48,000 is now gotten a $2,400 raise, and now the gap continues to grow. So it could potentially not only impact your first year, but potentially every earning year. And again, we can't make promises that you're going to get that, but that is a national average. So this probably more than anything gets a lot of students' attention about what the value of having that experiential learning is, besides just having the value of it for yourself. I put in here a couple of internships. I'm just gonna, you can certainly, there's a link to Northwestern internship. It's about a day in the life and what they learned through their internship process. I think it's pretty powerful. So if you have a few minutes, take it, go through the video. We're not gonna do that right now. I will tell you about some personal WCC experiences. So I had a student, first-year student. He was in the military. He was a strength and conditioning major, or I forgot what we actually call it here, but that's what he wanted to be, was ultimately a strength and conditioning coach. I actually asked him what his dream job was, which I thought this was a very interesting job. He wanted to go into coaching Olympic athletes and making them better athletes. That was his dream job. So no background in strength and conditioning coaching. He just started classes here. He hadn't even taken any of his physical therapy or coaching kinds of classes, strength and conditioning coaching classes here. He started his Gen Ed, except that he'd been in the military and he had done obviously a lot of conditioning and strength, strengthening and physical workouts in the military. We found together in my office that University of Michigan actually offered a strength and conditioning internship. So while he was in my office, we called up the gentleman who was running that program, and I said, listen, I have a student who's very interested. What does he need to do? How does he get this opportunity? What should he do? And so he kind of stepped us through it. He said he needs to go out and he needs to get CPR certified. He should come out and do some job shadowing and just see what it's like, and then we get a chance to know him. And so he did all that. But here's what's really cool. At the end of that conversation, that student here, he said, oh, by the way, I wanted to let you know something. He said, not only is this working with our athletes at the University of Michigan, this is working specifically with our athletes who are training, you got it, for the Olympics. And so this is a gentleman who never had any experience or background. I really make this point, really, I try to drive this really hard with you. He did all the things that the gentleman suggested on the phone, and lo and behold, not the summer before, he actually got that internship, and now he's basically doing his dream job, finishing up school, and hopefully one day we'll be doing this on a full-time basis. So this is a really good example of, you don't have to have a lot of background or experience necessarily to get these really great dream jobs. Google has a cool IT program. It's a 2-year program for if you graduate with an associate's degree or if you graduate with a bachelor's degree. The last semester you apply for this position, you get to travel all over Google's offices and learn various parts of their business. And they actually you spend 2 weeks in Australia learning it. So it's kind of a cool opportunity if you want to do it. It's kind of like a doctor in training. It's a residency program, 2-year program at Google. Department of Defense, all of you guys who are going into STEM majors, so science, technology, engineering, or math, the Department of Defense, and that kind of scares some people, but I will tell you, you're not enlisting, you're just working for a government agency, has a combination internship and scholarship program. It's called the SMART program. It includes an internship every year that you participate. You can start your freshman year. But it also includes 100% tuition reimbursement, health allowance, a book allowance, and the internship is paid itself. So in addition to tuition and internship experience, you get an internship salary, and it's a very generous salary, I will tell you. You do have to apply for it. You can look it up by just typing in Department of Defense SMART program. The scholarship usually opens up around August, and it closes typically by December, and it is for the summer. They start usually the summer programs. Where else can you find co-ops and internships, we have a great resource here right at WCC. If you go to wccnet.edu, you are all automatically connected to our job portal. It's called Career Connection. You can type that into the search bar. You just log in like you do to Blackboard, and you will see, like right now, and we typically have anywhere from 450 to over 500 jobs across all majors. You'll see right now internships, co-ops, full-time and part-time jobs in that. And I will tell you, that is a great resource to use, because typically a lot of students don't necessarily always apply or even know about this resource. And in general, the numbers are so low that most of the employers who see people who apply through our Career Connection site actually get some kind of recognition, whether that be a call, whether that be an interview. I will tell you, it is a great, great resource. When I say low numbers, less than 6 students usually apply for each of these jobs. So that's a lot better number than over 100 on Indeed. We talked about Indeed. I do recommend it for starting a strategy. Not all internships and co-ops are actually posted, I will tell you this. But what I tell students to do is look on Indeed to see who's hiring in your area on the full-time side. Go back then to their website, and lo and behold, you might see oftentimes, not on Indeed, but on their website, an internship opportunity. So oftentimes they're not posted on those big job boards. And so for co-ops and internship experiential learning, if you're just looking at Indeed, you might be missing a lot of them. But if you see the companies that are hiring for the positions you are, oftentimes they do have them on their websites. So that's a way to kind of use that resource in a different way and get better results. So the other thing I will say you, next steps, if you're interested in any of the things that I spoke about today, here's usually where we start. At Career Services, I would highly encourage you, and I'll put up my information, to make an appointment with us. Typical appointment the first time we meet is about an hour long. Usually most of the students that I start with have to either revise a resume, or if they've never crafted a resume, start by writing a resume, because even internships and co-ops are going to require you to apply with a resume. A lot of students might have done resumes but have never done a cover letter, or really don't know what they should expect to write in a cover letter, and I highly, highly recommend cover letters with every job you apply for. So if you haven't done that, again, we can help you with that. Mock interviews, in fact, I have a couple today. Most students, I find, most people, not just students, are nervous about interviews, understandably, right? What are they going to ask me? You know, I get nervous. I don't have a lot of confidence. So part of that is practice. The reason, a big part of why you would get nervous is because you don't do it very often, right? I might have interviewed a half a dozen times in my lifetime. That's not a lot. I'm not going to be very good at anything that I only do so infrequently. So one of the things that we do with mock interviews is tell you why they're asking the questions and help you answer those questions or tailor those questions so that you are in the best light with the employer, but of course being truthful along the way too. And second of all, the more you practice, the more you're confident, the more skills you're building, and the better you'll be when you actually go in for the real interview. So I highly recommend you take advantage of that resource too. And then again, the making the connections, getting back to the point about you know, how do most people find jobs is through connections. So we have some really, really strong relationships with employers, probably relationships that would be very difficult for you as a student oftentimes to garner. And please utilize our resources and our relationships rather than, I mean, you can do it the hard way. You can go out there and apply with a lot of dozens of other people and not know anyone. Or you really can use our resources, and I'm not just trying to plug me or our resources, but I really find that students come back to us after just meeting with us one time and say, oh my gosh, this was so helpful, thank you so much, just because it pointed them in the right direction and made looking for a job or an opportunity to find an internship so much easier than if they had just taken it on themselves. So I really, really encourage you to use these resources. They're free. By the way, they're lifelong services. So if you in 5 years decide right now you don't need us, or you have a job, whatever it may be, but in 5 years or 10 years down the road, if you ever want to come back, it's lifelong to all of our alumni here. So feel free to use those services at any time. So next steps, I would highly encourage you all to make an appointment with Career Services. If you are all local here, we are going to be moving to the Student Center. So that's where you'll find us. Right now we're in the Morris Lawrence building, but we're moving in August. begin to start exploring and discussing different opportunities, we can help you develop all those things that I just talked about, and then we're going to practice all these great skills at home once you meet with us. If you're interested in a co-op, I'm just putting the slide up here. I won't go through all of it, but again, there are a number of steps, and I would just probably encourage you again to come see us first, and we can walk you through, because you do have to get it approved. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to make this a co-op. Faculty has to sign off on it. We have to fill out some forms. We have to approve and vet the employer to make sure that that's something that's going to be a valuable experience for you for credit. And then last but not least, here is my information. I service all majors here at Washtenaw Community College. So no matter what major you are, if you are interested in experiential learning, you would come to see me, and that's my direct line and my direct email. I don't know how to email wouldn't be direct, but it's easiest to try to reach me via email, because I do go out and meet with employers and in and out of my office quite a bit. My email follows me, my voicemail doesn't. So please feel free to send me an email, say I'd like to set up an appointment. I'll find out what your availability is, and then we'll sit down and meet. If you're interested in full-time and part-time opportunities, we have 2 other advisors who split the majors, who I can also direct you to, and they can help you with resume writing and mock interviewing and finding those full-time and part-time opportunities. So before I turn it back over, any specific questions that you had today about experiential learning or things that you want to know a little bit more about, feel free to type in any questions you might have. And if you don't, that's fine. You can ask your questions of me anytime, or you can come in and talk to me about specific questions and how that might impact you. But I will tell you, every one of you who listed your major, accounting, woodworking, neuroscience, and who was the other one? Oh, pharmacy. Every single one of your majors, I have worked with students and helped them find opportunities. So don't feel that I can't help your major, because I know for a fact that I can assist each and every one of you. So it looks like there might not be any questions. I'll turn it back over to you if there's not any questions. And again, I hope I get an opportunity to see each and every one of you, hopefully in my office soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All righty, thanks for that great presentation. Very informative. So just to kind of recap, what is due this evening is Unit 3, Module 2, which includes your Journal 3, your time management planning for Unit 4, and you're going to make sure that your interview is scheduled, hopefully, with whoever you'll be doing that career interview with. So if there are no specific questions for me about what is due tonight at midnight or within the future units, please just type N in the chat box so that I know. Thank you, Sadie. Grace, very good, thanks. Adam, good. Anyone else? All right, well, if there are no further questions, that is all I have for you today. Keep up the great work, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you.